Welcome and thanks for joining today. Today I want to talk about mindfulness of patience and of impatience. First though, let's settle in, try to get centered. Welcome, thanks for joining. Just getting started. Please notice how you're sitting, where you're sitting. Are you on a chair? Are you standing? Are you lying down? Just kind of notice the container that you're in, container that's holding you up. I'll sound the chime. Please bring your attention to your breath. Don't need to change it. Don't need to judge it. Just notice. Notice the inhale, notice the exhale. Notice the chair you're sitting in, or the bed you're lying in, or the floor you're standing on. Kind of notice what's holding you up. Really feel the physicality of the feet on the floor, or the seat on the chair, the arms on the armrest, or perhaps the seat behind you for your back. And then just bring your attention to your body from your feet to your head. And look at that as your container. That's what's contained in the chair and what's contained in your body. Our mind, our spirit, our soul, our hearts, our lungs. Silently ask yourself this question. Don't look for an answer, just let it hang out there. Who is the breather? Who is the breather? This miracle that goes on 24/7 as long as we're healthy. We don't pay attention to it about 99% of the time.
And in fact, when I got there, the dean encouraged us to take out a piece of paper to write down, keep in our wallet forever. The reason that we were going to loss was to provide us with encouragement as we went through the loss process.
Notice the uplift and the nourishment from the in-breath.
This very important piece of paper I wrote down.
Perhaps direct that nourishment wherever you might need it today. Maybe luxuriate in that in-breath, in that nourishment, knowing that biology is bringing into our body elements, chemicals, whatever we need, along with some other things we don't want, but lots of what we need.
I bet you can probably sympathize with that sense. We do this work because we want to.
Now transfer your attention, please, to your out-breath. Nature's way of ridding our body of things we don't need. We might want to add a little something to it. A worry that we can't do anything about. We might have to breathe a little harder to reduce its intensity or get it out of us. See if you can notice the calmness that comes with the out-breath. Maybe that calmness could be available to us at times during the day when we need to take a quick break. The tension is high. Agitation is high. Bring your attention to your feet if they're on the floor or if they're not in shoes and whatnot. Just kind of notice the grounding. Really feel and perhaps exaggerate the grounding that comes with the out-breath, each in our own way.
How could we have internalized those kinds of things?
If someone could mute, please, that'd be great.
But of course it isn't. That was a driving reason that I actually created adjustments was to help organizations
Now follow the breath from start to finish.
In a way that is not only not helpful, it's actually really harmful. As white leaders in this work.
Thank you for muting. Notice the temperature when it enters your mouth or your nose. And notice the temperature when it goes out your mouth and your nose. See if there's any difference. See if it's a little cooler when it comes in and warmer when it goes out. Now direct the last couple of in-breaths to your heart space or any place else that might really need a little extra TLC today. I'm going to go ahead and sound the chime. So what I want to talk about today is mindfulness of patience and of impatience. We're all different. My personal level of patience has always been an area of concern for me and remains an area of concern. And mindfulness generally has helped me quite a bit. I notice some situations where I'm more patient than I used to be. I also notice ones where I'm not. I needed to, what I want to do when I want to encourage everyone is to observe and notice our level of patience and impatience from time to time. Now, of course, we have to pour in the self-love, pour in the self-compassion, dial down the self-judgment, but we want to keep the window for insight and wisdom open wide. And in order to do that, we've got to really be compassionate with ourselves, because it is almost certain, everybody's different, but it's almost certain that we're going to notice, as we notice and observe, sometimes some situations, some perhaps interactions with people where we're way less patient and way more impatient than we'd like to be. And those times, we've got to recognize it and we've got to breathe into it, give ourselves a break, because those are the opportunities that will give us wisdom and insight. So the mindfulness attitude of patience is a form of wisdom. It demonstrates that we understand and accept the fact that sometimes things must unfold in their own time. A child may try to help a butterfly to emerge from breaking open its chrysalis. Usually that doesn't help and can cause damage. Most people know that the butterfly can only emerge in its own time, that progress cannot be hurried. Likewise, there's lots of other situations that are similar to that. And if we keep the picture of the butterfly in our mind sometimes, it can help. For example, let's suppose that we have an employee that we're working with, and that employee isn't progressing as quickly as we would like. Could they progress if they worked a little harder? Do they have the capacity? Could they work a little harder? Perhaps they have some issues that make it impossible for them to progress in the way that we think they should progress. Likewise, school teachers, same thing. They have to determine with the students, are there some learning disabilities, some issues like that? How do I help that person? And in what situations I need to be more patient? Knowing which things benefit from hurrying and which do not benefit from hurrying and may even be damaged by hurrying is one of the wisdoms that may arise from mindfulness and observation and noticing patience and impatience with self-love and self-compassion. Recently, a book I was reading reminded me about Aristotle's golden mean concept, which I hadn't thought about for many, many years. And this notion is too much or too little, somewhere there's a sweet spot in the middle, and that's kind of the golden mean. I think it helps with patience because, for example, sometimes we're impatient and we're impatient with the way the world is, and we want some things to change. And while we can't control it completely, if we're impatient, maybe that activates us to do a little better job of trying to help making the world a better place. So impatience isn't always such a negative thing. Think about situations, common situations where we can notice our patience. We're in a long line at a grocery store, and the person in front of us, we thought we picked the right lane, but the person in front of us has something that the checker doesn't know how to do and has to call for the manager. Take a breath. Notice, take a breath. The whole time when you want to speak to a customer service rep on something that's not working right. The time we must wait while our friend or partner preparing more slowly or leaving a place more slowly. Big one waiting for our computer to reboot in traffic. Could be as big as waiting for our doctor to call with test results. Cultivating patience is one of the fundamental foundations of mindfulness. I'd like to distinguish between mindful quality of patience from a natural, energetic notion that some of us have. Some of us just move fast, think fast, walk fast, talk fast, listen fast. If we're like this, it's our natural way to be. Can we move away from it? Can we slow ourselves down a little bit if we want to? Can we make ourselves a little more patient? Yes, but it's one of these notions that says I have to love who I am and where I am. And I can hold, on the other hand, at the same time, the fact that I would like to become slightly more patient. So I'm not going to change who I am, but within the range of who I am, I can become more patient if I'm mindful, if I observe, if I notice, and I'm opening for the opportunity. So the notion is figuring out this is different for each of us and requires some insight, self-love, and some pausing. Now, one of the things that this wisdom that provides the wisdom and the insight is that we begin to notice with whom are we more patient and with whom are we less patient. In what situations are we more patient? In what situations are we less patient? This is information that can help us quite a bit. For example, if I'm going into a meeting with someone and I know, because I've observed and I've gotten the insight that this person really brings out impatience in me, then I can notice it. If when I felt impatient, I felt, where is the impatience? In my heart, in my tensing of my hands? Does it give me a headache? Where is the impatience? Maybe I can even develop an early warning system, sort of like noticing that headache is coming on. And instead of feeding it by getting intense and fighting it, I take a breath and I pause. Same kind of thing with impatience. I can learn to feel where it is in the body. I can learn what people bring it on. I can learn what situations bring it on. For example, I find myself more patient in the morning than I am in the evening. So to the extent I can, I try to avoid situations in the late evening or when I'm really tired that require a lot of patience. Sometimes you can't, but then at least I'm aware of what's going on. And when I can, I wait till morning for it. A perfect example that is true for almost everyone is that it's a lot easier to be patient when we feel well. A lot easier to be patient when we feel well, which means that when we don't feel well, it's a lot harder. Harder for us and harder for other people. So first of all, this is going to give us a notion about ourselves and maybe forgive ourselves for some impatience from time to time. And secondly, to recognize that the people we're dealing with, if we know that they're not feeling well, we can have a little more patience with them. We can have a little more patience with them, with their impatience, you might say. Patience is one of those virtues that sounds simple from a distance. However, while the thought of waiting for something you want to or need seems easy in theory, it's much more arduous in practice. When we're actually faced with the obstacle, the entire concept of patience grows more challenging, and it can be difficult to improve patience in that circumstance. Some people have more patience for family and loved ones, while others find strangers actually easier to be around. For some, the smaller the obstacle, the less the patience. We're all different. Whatever or whoever your trigger, patience is most difficult to muster when you encounter a roadblock or waiting time between you and something you want or need. Now, another thing to notice is that often when we're impatient, it's because things are not going the way that we want them to go. We want that employee to perform in a certain way. We want that student to learn in a certain way. We want that friend to act in a certain way. The same kind of thing with various different circumstances. We want the traffic to move faster. We want the customer service rep to answer more quickly and provide the answers that we need when we need them. Now, part of this is recognizing what we can control and what we can't. And sometimes we notice, wow, I am a control freak. What I'm impatient about is really something the other person has a complete right to be acting the way that they are. And yet, because they're not acting the way that I want, and I don't have the patience that I don't have the control I want, it's pressing the button. It's pressing the button. We're talking about mindfulness of patience and impatience. So sometimes the reason that we're impatient, sometimes it's because there's a particular person that presses the button and it's the trigger. Sometimes it's a kind of a meeting or a circumstance or situation. And sometimes it's because we don't have control. When we feel a little inept, when we feel less confident, then sometimes our impatience or patience arises. And that's why it's this whole notion of I can love where I am and also try to improve and try to change in this regard. It's such an important concept because I think that we mostly improve and move along in the direction that we hope we want to move in when we're giving ourselves a break, when we're not beating ourselves up. And the society and the culture often create circumstances where our self-judgments are very harsh. They're very harsh. And we need to notice all these things. We notice what it is, what are the circumstances under which I'm patient and impatient. As I said before, it's important to notice how we feel when we're impatient. It also, in a very positive way, it's very important to notice how we feel when we're being patient. Now, this is a hard habit to change over time, and we've got to pick little small ways of doing it so we can develop some momentum. And one of the ways of increasing the momentum is noticing improvement. Even if it's not great, if it's a little bit, and I say, wow, the last time I was with that person in this situation, I was so impatient. And this time I was less impatient. Maybe I was even patient, and that notion. And then if I can do that, then I do a few things. First of all, I can say, wow, what does being patient feel like? It feels really good. It feels really good. And also, I can begin to empower the emotion and the movement towards greater patience. So just as I understand the churning of my stomach when I notice I'm impatient, I notice the almost pat on the back kind of quality of when I notice that I'm patient, and particularly if I've noticed a little improvement. And it's got to be small at the beginning. You've got to be able to take comfort from that. So a couple of thoughts and ideas from when we notice that we're impatient. One is pause and breathe. This breathing that we do and the centering in and settling is just so crucial to us. If when we notice that either the early warning system of impatience or right smack dab in the middle, or even after we've noticed an interaction in which we're impatient, take a breath, pause and relax. Feel the nourishment of the in-breath. Perhaps direct it to where you're feeling tense. Take the out-breath and see if you can find that little spot of calm in the out-breath. See if you can spot that little spot of calm. Maybe do the square breathing that we talk about sometime, where you go inhale, pause, exhale, pause, inhale, pause, exhale, pause. I'm doing it too quickly, but any way we can use the breath to give us that pause and relax is going to be an opportunity to ease up and to find more positive things coming in. The second is stop resisting. Recognize that there's some things we just can't hurry up. Doesn't mean I'm not going to really try to improve different things, but it does mean that there may be some circumstances that we can't hurry up. The example I used at the beginning about the butterfly, or coming out of its chrysalis, or the caterpillar with the cocoon, whatever it might be, or the child at school that has some learning disabilities. Maybe we need to learn more about that person. Maybe it's dyslexia or something like that once we understand. On the other hand, maybe the person just doesn't have something that is needed for that particular lesson, whatever it might be. So we've got to recognize the situations that we can control and can't. And sometimes, give it a break. Give it a break. It's important to acknowledge the effects of impatience that we have and the negative piece, and also acknowledge the effects of patience. One time I was getting really impatient with a good friend because that person was late a lot of times when we were supposed to meet. And then I took a breath and I said, so I'm really impatient about that. I'm really, what am I going to do about that? One thing I could do is give up the friend, and I don't want to give up the friend. Friends are too hard and far between to give up for something like that. But maybe I should say, hey, in a nice way, is there some way we can, is this a bad time to meet? Do I need to give you, would it be better to, like, if we remind each other, or, what are the ways that we could ease this? So it's kind of a combination of how much patience is enough. Sometimes it's sad to say we find ourselves so impatient with a friend that we say, I'm not sure this relationship is worth it. Maybe I should see the person a little bit less. Understanding and getting the insight about ourselves. Small steps, small steps are very important because this is a big one and a complicated one. When you get behind you think you picked the exact right lesson at the time at the grocery store in the exact right lane, and then something happens to break it and you're already got your groceries on the track and you can't go to another one. I mean, you got to take a breath and recognize you're not going to be where you wanted to be quite as quickly. So or do you leave the grocery store if it's that urgent and just leave your stuff and say, I'm sorry? Usually not. You have to evaluate each of those situations and evaluate ourselves. As I said, I think loving where we are, it's still hoping and working towards change is the key. And that change comes from loving where we are. Lots of self-love and self-compassion and patience with ourselves as we look at ourselves as patient or impatient. Patience with the speed of the change. I'm going to sound the chime. Please be patient with yourself as a meditator. If you slip out of the meditation, find yourself doing expressed thinking, just be glad you noticed. Smile, count your breath, they come back in. If thoughts keep arising in your consciousness, be glad you noticed them. Smile and breathe, and most likely they'll pass out of your consciousness. Meditation is a time to be patient with ourselves as well. We have 2 minutes left on our meditation. I'm going to go ahead and sound the chime. Thanks so much for joining today. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Bye.